Welcome everybody to ROFLcast Reviews, where we go in depth on one subject and we break it down to its core. We're going to be giving you a breakdown and overview of the entire series, including spoilers. We're going to have our own theories that are postulated after the fact, information that was not revealed until the series has been over, rumors, spoilers, reviews, and more. All of this on ROFLcast
Reviews.
Perfect. Reviews. Okay. This week on ROFLcast Reviews, we are looking in depth of Making a Murderer. Now, Making a Murderer is a 10-part Netflix documentary series in the style of The Jinx or Serial, a podcast. Whoa, a podcast influenced a TV show? Who thought that would happen? In which it follows the trials of Stephen Avery and his wrongful imprisonment for 18 years for rape he did not commit, and then the subsequent rearrest and re-imprisonment for a murder of a woman that he may have committed. It is basically, to break it down, in not so many words, it's a documentary about when a white person gets treated the way black people do every single day by the court system. But because he's like, a big fucking deal, yeah. You know how many fucking drug dealers and shit? Like, have you seen The Wire? You know how many times they plant drugs on people to get convictions and shit because they want to like fuck up like someone's area or turf? This happens all the goddamn time. Yet, what happens to one fucking retarded white boy and everyone loses their fucking minds? And I love that people lived in this goddamn world where they were this naive world where like, oh man, this must be something crazy. This could never happen. And not to realize that this type of horrible injustice happens every single day, and it often happens to African American minorities in the United States of America. This guy,
I think that's the larger part of what this whole documentary series is showing is just what that looks like, the criminal justice system in the United States. It's a really in-depth analysis on that whole process and procedure and the way things are done. And it does point a lot of fingers at media as well. Overall, this series was filmed over a 10-year period, and I can't imagine what the editors of the documentary series had to go through.
Yeah, these motherfuckers need the goddamn Oscar for best editing. Like,
yes.
The amount of footage they must have had to comb over is... But not only that, the way that they were able to manipulate the audience was really, really good. They were very good at manipulating the audience. They were a little ham-handed in some instances. Like, on reveals, they would have, like, shaky cam reaction shots and, like, play a swell, like, to a point where you're like, come on, guys, like, chill out. And that and... I'm jumping around a bit, but the intro was like it was some Game of Thrones soundtrack with some eerie looking fucking True Detective shit in the beginning.
Totally.
I was like, what is this?
The theme song was really epic, and I actually really, really like that theme song.
It's a beautiful theme song, but it should be on Game of Thrones. It shouldn't be on this fucking thing about this fat retard who went to jail. This is what it's about. It's about two fat retards that go to jail for some bullshit. And whether or not they're guilty, we'll get into that. But let's break it down how it starts. Now, the series starts off with getting to know Stephen Avery. Stephen Avery, in the first episode, they paint the picture of who he was as a person. He was a young, dumb, he's like a hick. He's a hillbilly. Seemed to be, decent enough to the people around him, but he was part of a clique. Like his whole family, the Averys, were kind of like those no good, ne'er-do-well, scoundrel, inbred hicks. There's a lot of loops on that family tree going back into the stem, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And, as a simpleton, he goes on to talk about how this person as a retard goes on to make a family with another retard who's willing to have his retard babies. But he also took over looking after someone else's kid too. So he does have some good in him. And then he runs into this issue where, he's beefing with one of his cousins, and and she starts talking shit about him. And then so he confronts her and pulls a gun on her. It's like, why are you talking this shit? You got to stop talking shit. This is bullshit and stuff. So that was the first instance. And from that, her husband, who worked for the police force, was out to get him. So that's kind of how it starts.
There's a lot of that. And I think, I had no idea what I was getting into when I started watching the series. That whole first episode was very much, it almost feels like a prequel to the rest of what you're going to get into.
It is a prequel. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like the first episode explains how Stephen Avery, gets arrested and is convicted of a crime that it just so happens he didn't actually commit. And later on in the series, it uncovers that is actually the case. He did not commit that crime, and he goes to jail for 18 years. I do believe it's 18 years.
18 years.
In the very first episode, you watch this happen to this character, and it's like, to me, as I have watched a lot of crime documentaries over the years on A&E and things like that.
Yeah.
That I felt like it was done. I was like, okay, what the hell is the rest of this series going to be about? I just watched this one episode that it almost sums up the whole entire thing. But as it goes on, it gets deeper and deeper into what's happened to this individual. I really think that from a filmmaking standpoint, they did an amazing job to keep it compelling and to keep it interesting, to keep you engaged at the end of every single episode.
Editing, man. The editing was just fucking compelling.
Exactly, like on the edge of your seat from one episode to the next.
They ended the episodes the way they would end Lost episodes, with some big and then instantly the music would hit, and you're like, motherfucker! They did.
Yes, they'd have a big twist. Yeah, and they did such a good job. So, it tells this story of you did kind of. He's definitely a hillbilly. Somebody who's. He's not liked. I don't think any of his family is liked by the police force in Manitowoc County in Wisconsin. I think that they're known, individuals amongst the criminal justice system as well. Not just Stephen Avery, but all of the people he's surrounded by and connected with. But the part that stands out the most for me, again, with that first episode, was just how engaging it was and how compelled I was to continue watching the series. I felt like...
Remember how I said you had to almost struggle through the first episode? Did you feel that way at all?
It wasn't so much that I had to struggle through it. I just felt like, why am I watching this? Because it felt very straightforward. Like the way they presented it, from a filmmaking perspective, it just felt like a very straightforward A&E crime documentary. And, because it wasn't showing a lot of real-time footage in regards to what was going on, or it was telling the past, the history of this individual, their upbringing, what sort of happened to them, and this trial that they went through back in the 80s for the rape of a
Manitowoc County woman who's 23 years old.
Penny Bernstein.
Penny Ann Bernstein.
Yeah. It tells this whole story, and then basically, it shows him getting arrested, him getting convicted, him going to jail, what the process was for that, individuals that drew sketches of him to show that he was the person that did it. And then you fast forward in the second episode to 2003, where he gets exonerated based on DNA evidence, which proves that it was actually a known rapist in the area that committed this crime.
Yeah. And he also, who had, I think one of the most egregious things, you find this out later in the series, is that the man who committed this rape, 8 years before Stephen Avery was set free, came forward and let the arresting officer, the person who booked Stephen Avery, who was pretty much behind a lot of the conspiracy to set up Stephen Avery, he went to him and was like, hey, we have this rape in Manitowoc County. We have a guy here saying that he did it and that you guys have the wrong person. And he responded, we have the right person, it's fine. So he let, essentially, a raper, a known convicted rapist who was admitting to the crime, go free because he'd rather have someone he doesn't like in jail. That's the type of piece of shit this person is. And it goes on to say that the people who were handling the evidence, the people that were investigating the house, the people that Stephen Avery was suing were all the same people. Now, if you're suing the government, it's kind of weird to let the government search your house suing a county, a specific police station, and specific people. It's kind of weird to have them search your property when you're indicted in a murder trial.
Well, that's the interesting part. So let's fast forward. So he gets out of jail in 2003 after serving a sentence for a crime that he didn't commit. and now he is trying to get his life back together. So he's been out of jail for almost 2 years, and he decides that he's going to sue the county for arresting him and wrongly convicting him for millions of dollars to essentially pay reparations for his time that he spent in prison.
Mm-hmm. $36 million was the total amount he filed the lawsuit for being wrongfully imprisoned for 18 years.
And basically, it just so happens that at the same time that he started suing the arresting officer and the district attorney and the people in the county for all this money based on his wrongful imprisonment, he gets arrested again for the murder of Teresa Hallback or Hellbatch. Can't pronounce her name. A girl named Teresa.
Hallback, yeah.
Hallback, yes. So he's now arrested at the same time. And sort of the point that Achilles is trying to make is that, they basically go onto the property where he is, and I think it was 3 months, right? They sanctioned off that property?
I think 3 weeks, but yeah, it was a long time.
It was a very long time. And, the most, at least from my perspective, questionable thing is that they bring in a police force from another county to ensure that there's no people from the Manitowoc County who are being sued involved in the investigation. Yet the people who find the evidence that is used against Stephen Avery just so happen to be the people from Manitowoc County.
Yeah.
The county that's getting sued.
That's county's getting sued. That seems a little unfair. Now, the reason why it was so bad, as we see in the episodes, is that because there was such an egregious abortion of justice. I never thought I'd be able to say that and be serious. Yeah, it was an egregious abortion of justice because the woman, when she described the man, when she described her assailant, she described a certain person, and the sketch artist, who was a police officer, drew Stephen Avery essentially, and then once he had Stephen Avery behind bars, he framed the picture of his sketch and the mugshot of Stephen Avery after he was arrested, and had it hanging in his office as a prize to be like, hey, look, I manipulated this woman to say that this guy did it. He's now in jail for the rest of his life, and I'm hilarious and amazing. I got back at this fucking asshole. And they were celebrating it, which is amazing. That is top cack when you literally frame your framing.
And when he was questioned about it, he still said, oh, well, it's not proven, or, well, I can't remember the exact word he said, but he said, that's your opinion, that, there you go. When you literally frame your framing. He was still defending the fact that Stephen Avery was guilty of that crime, even though someone else's pubic hair was found on the girl that was being raped.
And when the woman saw the person that it was the really accused, she said, yes, that's much more what he looked like. Which is even more funny. And she apologized to Stephen Avery and hugged him. So if a woman was raped by this guy, I doubt she would hug him and apologize. It's kind of a weird thing to do. The what's it called? The guy who framed the picture of the making a murderer to get Stephen Avery from the mugshot, when they were initially bringing in the girl and she was distraught and she was trying to describe who her attacker is, the arresting officer said, oh, that sounds like Stephen Avery. And then that was something they wouldn't admit to. So they had it planned out from the beginning. These people literally went out of their way, either convincing themselves or by convincing other people that this guy was guilty. So we have to actually, we have to learn, or we have to kind of decide one of two things about these people. Are they so ignorant? Or are they so hell-bent that they want to get this guy, that no matter what anyone said, they would just twist, their minds are so broken that they would just keep pushing Stephen Avery because they honestly believed it? Or are they that deranged, mentally twisted, and hurtful that they would rather let a rapist go free and use this opportunity to pin it on somebody else because they see it's opportune just to fuck someone over they don't like? Because that's what it seems like. And if that's the case, I wouldn't put it past them for killing somebody either.
I think in this instance, they had I don't like to believe that they were trying to just put him in jail for the sake of putting him in jail for 18 years. I tend to believe that they thought they were doing the right thing of putting somebody who was potentially dangerous behind bars, but they had blinders on all the way. Like even back in the 80s for his first conviction, they had total blinders on. They weren't willing to look at the evidence, and they almost refused to look at the evidence.
Yeah, absolutely. And then even when the arresting officer had the information that Stephen Avery was innocent, he chose not to report it, not say anything about it, and keep and the exonerating evidence away from Stephen Avery's case. And then the day after that Stephen Avery was actually released, then he admitted and filed a police report saying that he was told by the other officer that they had the wrong guy. Then he did it. He waited 8 years.
Well, and and that's the thing. Like this whole series shows so many inconsistencies like that in regards to the law enforcement's characters, where they are doing things that it almost makes you believe that like who would act like that, who would do such a thing. It's pretty messed up.
It's insanely messed up. But once again, these like. We've talked about this. Nigga, I got priors. You won't surprise me that there's an abortion of justice. There is no justice. You are guilty. If they want you to find guilty, they will railroad you through these. They are about, like, even in Canada, they're about conviction. They're not about actual truth. They just want you to say this. Okay, we did it. We get the conviction. We go. That's how they perceive results. They treat it like a mass factory. They don't treat it like art. They don't see any nuance in it. Everyone is guilty in their eyes, and they will manipulate things. They will ignore factual evidence. They will. I mean, like I can talk about a pretty gross, egregious misplacement of justice, but like. There's a lot of instances of this, and I've seen it happen many, many times, and it's not isolated. And this is just an example of how horribly corrupt police systems are. Canada, way less so than the United States, absolutely. But don't think this all rosy peaches up here, because there's a lot of people getting fucked by the system day in, day out in Canada too.
Well, in a lot of cases with this, when they show the sort of the media circus that was around this case that was taking place.
That's something very different that I was not used to.
You have the prosecutor that's coming out and basically, saying things to the media, releasing information to the media about the case and about what they've sort of said they've uncovered, quote unquote, which is based on just complete fallacies. It's based on things that are complete bullshit, but then they go to the TV or to the media, and they tell them all this stuff, and the media gets on TV and they tell everyone all these things, and people start believing these things. Jurors see the things that's been said on TV, even though when it comes to the actual trial, a lot of those things are redacted. So it's pretty fucked up in regards to how that whole process, that whole system of like criminal investigations and media involvement and all those things gets really dirty and really grimy in a lot of ways. And
the fact that we're proud about it and like gloating, it's so disgusting.
He was smiling and just glowing when he was telling this gruesome story that was just completely fabricated bullshit.
Yeah, it's so like horrific to think about the implications of that there are normal people, seemingly normal small town folk, who are capable of this type of like horrible bastardization or like just misuse of power. And that's what it is. This is like such a power trip. Like, we don't like you, we're gonna fuck you the rest of your life. We don't care who else we hurt. And more women were raped, more people were hurt, and a guilty man was set free because they. And the worst part is they were watching this dude, and they stop for like a day or something to go, fuck with Avery or whatever. And during that time is when the assault happens, when they finally stop watching the guy, when he finally loses his tail, and it happens. And that's just so obvious to me. It's like, hey, we have a known rapist in the area. Keep an eye on him. Okay. You disappear on him for a few hours. Woman gets raped. Who's the first person you look at? Like it just so obvious that like, and when you see them sitting up on the stand, and those two fantastic fucking lawyers that Avery has is breaking it down and throwing in their faces, and you see that little curl of a smile on all of them, that little curl on their lip. They're happy that they did this. They enjoy that they hurt somebody. They know they did something wrong and they got off on getting away with it. They were doing something naughty to spice up their boring ass lives, and they enjoyed it. They are sick, fucked up people. And I looked into their souls and I saw them lie there. I saw the little smiles of that dumb, frizzy-haired fat bitch from the lab that was trying to prove that Avery's DNA was in the house and in the fucking in the trailer. You know, when she finally gets trapped and admits, okay, yes, I was told to look to make sure that thing had his DNA on it. You know, that little smile on her face, or in the officer's face when they realize that they didn't sign in at the right time, or that they lied under confession. You know, all those little moments, you see them break. You see them blink too much. You see that little curl of a smile, like unintentionally when they're caught. You see them look down at the ground. These people are liars. And now for the rest of their lives, it doesn't matter if they are free the rest of their lives. They are trapped in public perception for the rest of their lives. I know, and a lot of people now know, that these people are liars, that they are bad people, that they are sick, twisted, hell-bent individuals. Because no matter, you know what, I may not like people, and there may be people I want to fuck, and I'll probably find a way to fuck them, but I would not do it at the expense of others. I would not let a woman get raped or a known rapist go free just for my own shit. Like, there's just no one I hate that much.
Yeah, because when you think about it, how many other people were attacked because they let that individual...
What if he attacks someone you love? How could you ever forgive yourself for that? It's not worth the risk. Like that, it was so fucking gross. But those people, I mean, they're going to go to the grocery stores. They're going to go to, you know, the mall. They're going to go to places. People are going to see them. People are going to know what they did. And they're going to know that, and that they're gonna have to watch the back the rest of their lives, because having an instance to not help that person, I will take that instance. If I see that woman who framed him for the DNA evidence leave her cell phone somewhere, I'm not giving it back. I'm smashing that cell phone. If I see one of those stupid fucking cops out driving and his gas tank is open, I'm leaving that shit fucking open. If there's ever an instance where I can hurt them, even in a small way, I will do it, because that's my revenge on them. And I think everyone else feels the same way. If they forget something at the grocery store, like their wallet or something, do you think the cashier's gonna call after him? It's like, fuck you, you put an innocent man in prison, you can go to hell. And now let's say Stephen Avery is guilty of the second one. Let's say he's guilty of it. If he's guilty of it, they still did wrongdoing. They still didn't handle it properly. They still didn't do things by the book. Why? If he didn't do it, they had no need to be shady. If it was so obvious that he did it, they would have done things by the book, but they didn't, because they know they were going to be under scrutiny. They knew there was cameras around, and they still fucked it up, because those people are in Manitowoc County are as dumb as Stephen Avery. They're all just dumb.
Well, and just overall, like watching the whole thing, I still can't even come to... Part of me just can't believe that it's real in regards to how it was handled by law enforcement and how it was handled by the prosecutor. I think Stephen Avery's lawyers sort of said it best. What happened to innocent before proven guilty?
Yeah, exactly. The presumption of innocence was robbed of him because they plastered for the last 18 years that this guy's a rapist all over the news.
And it was totally lost. And it felt like they were trying to tell this narrative that was complete bullshit. Like, whether Stephen Avery, committed the second crime or not of, murdering Teresa, the way that was handled by law enforcement, by the prosecutor's office, like by all of those things, was just a gross injustice.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like every bit of it.
And even the confession of Stephen Avery's nephew, watching that video of basically the police officers just basically forcing him to say what they wanted him to say.
Exactly.
Making him say it. They basically were giving him the narrative. They were telling him what they wanted him to say. And the kid has some serious mental challenges and difficulties as an individual. That's like, who does that? Who goes and gets somebody who's handicapped to give a confession?
It's disgusting. Like the fact that they would manipulate a mentally challenged child and put him in jail the rest of his life as well for probably, I don't know, man. There's some other shit too. We have to get into that other information. We'll quickly go through the episodes about them. And then we'll go through the timeline. And then after that, we'll talk about the theories. So we talked about the first couple episodes, how they talked about 18 Years Lost, the first episode, which is about the precursor to Stephen Avery getting locked up for his 18 years. Then Turning the Tables, episode 2, is where they kind of looked about around the corruption of the Manitowoc counties. And that's actually where I thought the series got interesting. I did not like the first episode. And I instantly did not like Stephen Avery. I don't have any sympathy for him. I don't care that he's in jail. I don't care that he's had a horrible life. He threw a cat into a fire. Like, dude, good people don't do that.
He's got some fucking issues, that guy.
He might be retarded, but he hurt an animal, so he can just die for the rest of his life. I don't give a fuck. Die for the rest of his life. Hilarious. So, and then number 3, Stephen goes back in jail. He gets charged with murder, but there was troubling questions about why he got arrested. So 18 years after, he was out for 8 months. During that time, there was a woman from Auto Trader who's coming in to take photos of his vehicle. She gets killed on his property, presumably. They pin it on him, and he goes back to jail. But then when they're looking at the evidence, they realize that's not that tight. But then a new wrinkle occurs. Number 4 is where the series really takes a turn, and I think I really got invested, because that's when we are introduced to Stephen Avery's nephew. It's that episode, Indefensible. They talk about, he comes up with a confession. So they essentially take his nephew, who was with Stephen at the time. Two detectives take a minor by himself from school without parental permission, and wouldn't let his mom go into the room with them, and then interrogate him for hours and hours and hours, where they call him a liar 83 times. And that's the amount of times that it took until his story changed, where he's saying, I didn't do anything. I was just playing video games. I was hanging out. Like, it wasn't anything. And then he started just answering the way that they wanted to answer. What did you do? Tell us what you did to, like, there's an instance, like the best instance of how corrupt it was and how much the investigators led him. Remember, this is the same investigators that were the ones that had the information about Stephen Avery being innocent and not releasing it. The same ones that had him processed in the first place, and the same ones that he was he was suing. These are the ones that are trying to coerce this confession out of this kid. So after 4.5 hours of interrogation, they finally get what they want. And there's time there where they needed Brendan Dassey, who is Stephen Avery's nephew, to say that the woman was shot in the head, because that was some like evidence that they had, and it was important. And they were trying to lead him there. They're like, "What did you do to her head?" I don't know. What did we do? He's like, what did you do? What did you guys do to the head? What did you do to the head? Think about what you did. Be honest. Think about what you did. He's like, I don't know. We cut her hair. He's like, okay. What else did you do to the head? Think about it. What did you do to the head? Not the hair, but what else did you do to the head? He's like, we cut her throat. He's like, okay. And then like they keep doing it, and then he's not getting the hint that he wants to say shot in the head. So then the investigator finally comes out. It's like, okay, so I'm going to come out and say it. When did you shoot her in the head? And he's like, I guess after. Like, he's just saying what they want. But they're literally leading him for the thing. He didn't bring up the gun ever. They brought it up.
Oh, yeah, they did. They were the ones introducing evidence into this confession.
And then when the confession was read back, they're like, how did you know all this information then if it's not true? It's like, well, nigga, he was being led, obviously. I almost want to see that 4.5 hour like interrogation.
The whole thing?
Yeah. But I mean, this is the problem. The kid is agreeable because he's a fucking retard. He's like legit a retard. So he's just agreeing with what the adult said because like he's just guessing like he does on his homework. And I thought one of the most amazing parts of the entire series was in episode 9 when they're asking him, it's like, you wrote this confession about saying how you raped her and tied her to a bed and, you know, cut her throat and all this stuff. It's like, where could you have possibly have gotten that? And he's like, I don't know, probably from books. And then the defense is like, what book has a woman tied to a bed? What book has her raped and killed. What book that you read has that in it? And they're silent for a minute. He's like, it's called Kiss the Girls. And then he's like, shit. Like, he legit read a book and that's what it's about. Fucking the retard legit. That's where he got the information from. Like, it's so funny. Like, that's such a great moment where this smarmy, shitty prosecutor thinks he has him fucking cornered. This dumb idiot hasn't read a fucking book about this shit. Motherfucker pulls out the goddamn book.
Well, and that's the, man, like the amount of situations that happens throughout that whole process. You know, it's not just a one-time thing where you're hit in the face with these weird twists and things that you don't really see coming. You know, from a filmmaking standpoint, they did a really good job editing all of that together to keep you compelled, to keep you interested, to keep you intrigued. You know, at the end of the day, I honestly, out of all the people that's involved in this, that's the individual that I feel the worst for.
Brendan Dassey.
Yeah, like Brendan Dassey, the kid couldn't even, you know, tie his own shoes for Christ's sakes.
Yeah.
Jail.
Hey. Yeah. Like, you should listen to them talk. It's so fucking funny to how hick they are.
Good impression. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Like, you just listen to that over and over for 10 hours. I'm just like, these retards. All right, let's go through the timeline. So on August 2nd, 1983, Gregory Allen stalks a woman in front of him, pulls his shorts down, so it begins masturbating and lunges at the woman. The woman gets away and calls the police, who arrest Allen. Allen later calls the woman twice at her home, and he asks her to drop the charges against her. The prosecutor is Dennis Vogel. The charges were reduced to indecent exposure. And then, in January 1985, 2 years later, Stephen Avery was charged with endangering safety and felony gun possession when he ran his cousin, who is also wife of the Manitowoc County Sheriff, off the road and pointed a rifle at her because she was talking shit about him, as we talked earlier. But when Avery saw that she had her daughter in the back seat, he backed off. He was sentenced for 6 years in prison for this crime. All right. Then in 1985, later in July, the officers are at Manitowoc City Police Department are told to get daily surveillance on Allen. Now, what this is going to do, like, Allen, once again, was... I'll send you the link here. Do you want to follow along here? Can you see it well, or should I just need the link? Yeah. And so what they were doing is pretty much making sure that this molester was not going to go out and molest people like he usually does. He's a dangerous individual with potential of violence, a police report stated. So here comes on to July 29th, 1985. So the Manitowoc PD, their surveillance was interrupted on Allen that day. He was unsupervised. The only time he was unsupervised in the last few months was during the time of the attack. The known rapist was unsupervised while she, like, it's so obvious. It's embarrassing that they got away with it at all. That it took 18 years. Like, that people could be that dumb. That people, even around them, didn't see this abortion of justice and was like, oh, this is clearly bullshit. So Penny Ann Bernstein is attacked while jogging along Lake Michigan, north of Two Rivers, by a straggly-haired man in a leather jacket. He pulled a knife and forced her into a wooden area. He sexually assaulted her, beat her, and left her bloodied. And then at the hospital, she describes her rapist to Deputy Sheriff Judy Dvorak. And she said, the sheriff says, that sounds like Stephen Avery. Well, first of all, you're not supposed to do that from a fucking word description from a victim in a hospital. That's just so ridiculous. And because of this, they asked for Avery's photo, including me in the lineup. And then before the photo lineup happens, Thomas Kachorek renders a composite drawing of Avery's photo. Like, it's drawn from that. And then shows that to the victim and asks them if that's the person. And she identifies Avery, of course. But although his description doesn't fit Gregory, it's still there. And then Avery is identified again. He maintains his innocence, and they find him guilty of first-degree murder on December 14th, 1945. So he's in there for pretty much ever. And then In 1994, Andrew Colburn is the main asshole here. Remember that name. Andrew Colburn is a garbage human being. He is horrible. If he forgets his phone at the grocery store, take a dick pic on it, send it to every one of his contacts, and then release his bank account information online. He receives a call from Brown County detectives stating that he had someone in custody, claiming that Manitowoc County was holding someone in custody for a crime he committed. So basically, he just admitted to the crime, and even though they had that information, Hazelwood denies Avery's bid for new trial based on newly discovered evidence that shows scrapings taken from under the rape victim's fingernails did not contain his DNA. But remember, although it didn't have his DNA under the fingernails, he was denied a new trial. And that went to appeals and was also held up. So you got to think that, like, not only there's too many people involved at this point. We know that it's bullshit. Now that there's DNA saying that it's bullshit, it went to different courts and they were still like, yeah, this is fine. So this shows you this is a systematic problem in the system, not an isolated thing. It is complacent within our system, secretly, that they are allow these types of abortions of justice for what they may consider a greater good. Is that not a reasonable theory?
Yeah, like the fact that he was in there for 18 years while the person who actually committed the crime said, hey, I did this, and you have someone in jail for the crime that I committed. Like, the fact that alone didn't get him out of prison.
And then thank God for the Wisconsin Innocence Project, who on their own dime funded and petitioned and pleaded and appealed to get DNA testing on those 14 fibers or 13 hairs. So they get the DNA testing in 2003. Remember, he was arrested in 1985. So that was 2003. So they really reveal that the 13 hairs were for the same person that confessed to the crime back in 1996. So between 1996, when they confessed to the crime, and when the DNA matched it in 2003, Avery was just sitting there. He could have got out in 96, but he was sitting there until 2003.
Yep.
Now, realizing their mistake, they have multiple opportunities to fix it. This is why they're unforgivable. So then September 11th, 2003, never forget, Avery is freed from prison after spending 18 years for the rape he never committed, and then he moves into a trailer with his new girlfriend. Andrew Colburn, and then so that's September 11th, he's released. September 12th, Colburn contacts his superior officer, James Lenk, the other person who's privy to this, you piece of shit, about the incident in 1995. So this is September. So he makes a report about the call in 1995 in September 12th, 2003. Seems
8 years later.
Yeah, seems a little long. So they started interviewing the Avery's case. They go off and try to get a wrongful conviction and try to hit back to get money against the against the county for wrongful imprisonment, for his wrongful conviction rather. And then both Lank, Sandy Morris, and Colburn are deposed. So, okay, in 2005, they finally get the interviews with Colburn. He admits to receiving the call and not saying anything about it, and no one gets in trouble for this. There's no issue with it. Chief Eugene Koosh is opposed. He's skeptical Gregory Allen committed the crime, even though the DNA evidence matches, the timeline matches. He confessed the crime. He thinks his police sketch that he did of Stephen Avery, based on Stephen Avery's photo, is more of a reasonable rendition of what happened than the actual DNA evidence and confession, which is interesting. I mean, you can't, when he was like, I don't know. It could be anything. It could be aliens, you know? It's just so embarrassing as he's trying to play dumb. I'm like, no, you're dumb, but you think, like, you're dumb for the wrong reasons. You're dumb because you think you're playing dumb is fooling anyone. We know you're a liar. We see through you. We see that you're garbage. And the fact that you're still lying now is just embarrassing for you, you fat loser. I hope you die of heart disease. So we go on. Teresa has a problem with her ex-boyfriend. So it's October 30th, 2005. Here's the interesting part. This is where things get twisted. So this is like a year, 8 months after his release, pretty much. This is when he's suing the county for $38 million. Teresa Hallback, who ended up being murdered, and bones were found on the Avery property. She has an encounter with her ex-boyfriend, Ryan Hillegas. Ryan says that he definitely saw her that day, but he says he does not recall the time of day, and Stephen Avery girlfriend goes to jail for her 50 DUI. Now, I'm not saying that it was her boyfriend, but this creepy motherfucker knew her ex-boyfriend. She was living with a new dude. He said that it wasn't sexual. He said that it was fine and that they were still friends and shit. But he guessed her voicemail password and accessed her voicemail and deleted a bunch of them after she died. Now, that's a little strange for an ex-boyfriend to do.
No, I think that was her brother that did that, but still.
No, the ones that deleted it was her ex-boyfriend that guessed the voicemail password and went in there and deleted some of the voicemails because the voicemail was full and then had room on it.
Yeah.
And when they called in the expert from Verizon, he said no, they would have not expired by that time. They'd still be in there. So October 31st, Halloween, Stephen Avery calls Auto Trader to request a photographer who had been out there previously to photograph a van that they have for sale. 8 calls made to her home. She contacts them back. This is all just like the phone line stuff. I mean, the phone line stuff, you may have to look into this a little bit deeper to see the actual like timeline of it. But he saw that that she came out there, that she was scheduled to be out there and take those photos. She knew what she was doing. She went into the trailer and spoke with Avery briefly. Avery had worked with her before. This was not uncommon. They own a salvage yard. They were using the Auto Trader photographer. And the fact they were using the same person they've always used. Nothing strange about that. Oh, interesting. So at 3:30 p.m., here's something that was left out, is that John Legrin, who delivers propane for Valder's Co-op, testified that he fills his truck with propane near Avery's property. He fills it around 3:30 for half an hour. He said that he saw the RAV4 leave the property, but did not see who was driving it. If you're going to kill someone on your property, rape her in your bedroom, drag her to your garage, chop up her body, and then burn her in a fire pit in the middle, would you take her vehicle out for a joyride? During the middle of this?
No.
Seems a little weird. So, at 3:45 is when Brendan Dassey testifies that after getting home, he went to the house and played PlayStation 2 with his brother, and he was going to go trick-or-treating until their mom came home. So, at 4:21... Laura, the person at Singular, testifies that all activity on her phone, on Hallback's phone, ceases at 4:21. We know the phone's probably destroyed at that time. At 4:35, it said that the phone records show that she received a phone call at 4:35. It lasted 13 seconds, but could not tell if it was answered or went to voicemail. 7 calls made to the girl's phone between that time and 6:42, all from Chicago. Brendan testified his mother comes home from work and then leaves to go to the hospital to visit Scott's mother sometime before 6. And that's around 5 o'clock. Stephen Avery calls from the jail around 5:30, and they speak for 15 minutes. So if the outgoing activity in Hallback's phone stopped at 4:21, we know that within 40 minutes, Brendan's with his mom at home. Within 30 minutes. And within less than 1 hour from that time, Stephen Avery is on the phone with his girlfriend, who said she would notice if he was panting or was doing something. She could tell in his voice, which she does not. And then at 8:45, Scott Tadich testifies that the flames from the bonfire were there. So they had a big bonfire on 8:45. And then at 9 o'clock, Brendan testifies that his mom was calling to make sure that he's getting home. Brendan and Stephen stood by the fire until 10 p.m. Stephen Avery's girlfriend calls around 9:30, so they speak for 15 minutes. And then Brendan went home and talked to his mom around 10. So that's the timeline of everything up until the murder. Now, the murder, obviously, like you can see from it, there's reasonable doubt that Avery didn't do it, but there's also a lot of doubt or a lot of speculation that he did do it. From this information and from watching the documentary, how do you feel about it?
Overall, there's again so many inconsistencies and problems in not just like the story of events, but in also the story of the evidence and how the evidence got to these places, and why was it not found by the police officers from the other county? Why was it only found when the police officers from the Manitowoc County went onto his property? Why was the evidence only found at that time?
Yep.
That's one of the
not only just the Manitowoc County. It was when Colborne was there. It's always Colborne. Every single one lines up with Colborne.
Well, him and
his what's it called? His sergeant or superior.
Yeah, Link
and Colborne. They're always together.
There's just a lot of issues. Like whether I would, say, that Avery is innocent or not, I couldn't, make that assessment without seeing the full length of the evidence, not just what was provided to me based on the documentary. Because the documentary definitely left out
some stuff. Yeah.
But
I mean, it's 700 hours of footage in a 10-hour documentary. They're going to leave some shit out.
Oh yeah, they had days of footage that they had to cut down, and they were still, at the end of the day, they're making entertainment. They're making a series that people are going to be entertained by. Overall, I would say they definitely hit the mark in regards to making a compelling documentary series that kept me on the edge of my seat.
But is he guilty?
But is he guilty? I don't know, man. There's some problems with that whole case. There's problems everywhere.
But is he guilty based on what do you feel after this? What's your gut telling you?
There's too many inconsistencies. I have reasonable doubt.
Okay, I say not guilty. That's what I'm feeling. All right. So after 2 days, when Hallback doesn't show up, here's an interesting thing about Hallback not showing up. Okay, if a girl goes missing, who do you look first? People look at the ex-boyfriend, because 99% of the time when someone dies or goes missing, it's someone they know.
Yep.
Or how about the roommate that didn't report her missing for 3 days? Those are both people that you'd probably want to question, neither of which are questioned. Those are both people you probably want to be suspicious of. They were both led onto the Avery property for hours to look around to help look for clues. Does that not seem a little fishy? Like, there's obviously a bias here. Like, we're proving over and over egregious bias towards them wanting to convict Avery, not just in the first case, but in the second case as well. To the point where they're putting people that could very well, are not only very well could be, are literally the most likely people to be the murderers in a position to plant evidence.
Oh, 100%.
And knowing that these people are going after the Averys makes it so much easier, because you're like, oh shit, these people really want the Averys. I should just pin it on them. It's so perfect. And that she was there, you're like, perfect. This is like, that the Averys are the perfect alibi. And especially because her ex-boyfriend's a goddamn cop. They're like, oh, how could he know the cop system so well? They'd have to know the cop system well. You're saying the cops did? How about if your fucking ex-boyfriend, who you're estranged from, who knows who hacked your voicemail passwords and deleted voicemails, also was a cop? Also probably knows the bias towards Stephen Avery, is probably smart enough to put all this shit together. I blame that motherfucker. Now, not only is that fishy, the boyfriend and the roommate not getting questioned, but Colborne is recorded talking to dispatch 2 days after she goes missing, asking them to run the plate SWH582, and then it says it belongs to the missing person Teresa Hallback, and then Colborne says a 99 Toyota, and she says yes. But this is days before that they find the vehicle, or he should have even known about the vehicle. This is a call from Colborne. So how does he know the license plate if he's not, and the type of vehicle, if he's not looking at the fucking car 2 days after they're missing, and no one knows where the fuck she is or the RAV4 is?
The only reason you'd call that in is if you're looking at the plate.
You're looking at the fucking plate. I mean, that's the one that's a clincher for me. So in November 4th, the day after, 2 helicopters flew over Avery's lot looking and taking pictures. And then he was interviewed by the police. And then they start looking at financial transactions and her phone records, and the news and shit start getting into it. The Hallbacks are interviewed. Her ex-boyfriend starts a search group and is able to go on around. Basically, that's the smartest way. You want to plant evidence, start a search group. And then you can plant evidence where the fuck you want. Be like, yeah, I found it. Or not find it. And, because you're searching with them, you know where people are looking, and you can see where they have looked and would have missed. And you can find an even better hiding spot then. So then November 5th rolls around, and this huge auto yard with thousands of vehicles, this girl, Pam Strung, who's a former private investigator, discovers the SUV within 15 minutes. And she said that it was a sign from God. Now, I'm not sure. I'd taken you to church earlier, but I don't know if you believe in God, Fable listener. But if you do, he is not guiding you to RAV4s and salvage yards. If he's letting kids die from Ebola in Africa, he is not taking his effort or time or her time to guide you to a RAV4 in a salvage yard. That is fishy. I don't believe this bitch for 1 second. She knew that thing was there. She was told it was there. And when she called it in, she was excited. She was like, I found a RAV4. It was all buried. Is this the one? It's like, ma'am, we can't. It's like, can I get the number? And it's like, tell me, is this the one? And it's like, ma'am, I can't tell you that. She's like, I'm not giving you a number unless you tell me which one it is. She was like, she wanted to know for sure that it was the one. It was like a sweepstakes tour. It was a game tour. It was disgusting. Hearing like the excitement in her voice and her blackmailing the officer, be like, I'm not going to give you the license plate unless you tell me if this is the one or not. That's disgusting. That's crazy. That's something a crazy person does. And that's just adds another fucking crazy person that adds into the conspiracy. And this is where it gets to the point where there's so many people that like could be a part of this that it starts being unfeasible at this point. You know what I mean?
Well, you start to feel like you're watching fiction. Mm-hmm. Like you're like, this can't be a real thing. Like this can't be what's actually taking place. It's just so out of this world in regards to all of these different things that are going on between, what's taking place on the prosecution side, what's taking place on the police side, what's taking place on the Avery side. The Averys seem like a colorful bunch.
Yeah.
It's really messed up and
wonderful whites of West Virginia. That's just how they are.
The sad part for me again is just I feel like there was not proper actions taken by law enforcement and taken by the prosecution and taken by all the individuals involved in the whole prosecution process. There was way too many problems and issues with it, and part of me almost feels like this should have been a mistrial and they should have had to start over again. A lot of the evidence should have been thrown out. A lot of the things that the defense were not allowed to do, like the defense were not allowed to try to prove his innocence by trying to show that someone else were the individuals that actually caused the crime. They weren't allowed to show what's it called, third party liability or something, not liability, but they weren't allowed to say that it was someone else that did this crime.
Right. Yeah, third party liability, I think is right. Yeah,
they weren't allowed to in the actual trial, they weren't allowed to say to the jury that someone else caused this crime. Stephen Avery,
crazy.
They have the wrong man. Like, how could you make it so they're not allowed to say that? Like, it's so messed up, and just the amount of wackiness that took place between the confession side of things, and that was a lot of their case. A lot of their case was based on this confession from Stephen Avery's, we'll call him, mentally challenged nephew, who has the IQ of like 70 or something, and that was what a lot of their case was based on. And when you watch that confession, that it's just a crock of shit. Like the fact that that's what they base their case on is just sad. And you'd think that they'd be trying to get justice, like they'd be trying to actually prove
their job. It's their job.
Yes, it's their job to prove the truth. It's not to convict an individual. It's to have the truth come out. That's what they're supposed to be doing. And I really feel like they did a disservice to And that's the thing. Like, is that what the criminal justice system is like now? Is that what it's become? Is it all about convicting people and putting them in jail and
It's
not?
not all about that. Let's not get dramatic. It's like it's definitely part of it, though.
Yeah, well, and I think in this instance especially, like they were on a warpath to put this individual behind bars, because at the end of the day, had he not gone to jail, he would have sued that county for $36 million, and the county would have been on the line. The county of Manitowoc. It would not have been, something small. It's not like Manitowoc is a massive place with tens of millions
Right.
just kicking around. Like, that would have been a huge thing for them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still like that initial injustice that happened. But I guess in the end, like, I don't know if you want to jump forward a little bit, but he gets convicted.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, he's in jail right now.
He is in jail right now, and he's been convicted for this crime that he was convicted of under very questionable circumstances in regards to how he actually got convicted, and so was his nephew, and again under very questionable circumstances under which he got convicted.
We have a couple more like bullshitty things that they did.
Sure.
The officers right after that Pam Strum called about the RAV4 being there. The officer 1 says, other than the car, do we have anything else? Officer 2 says, not yet. Officer 1 says, is he in custody? Officer 2 says, negative, nothing yet. Is he in custody? They know that they're talking about Stephen Avery without even having to fucking discuss his name, which is pretty fucked up. So that's on November 5th. Remember the 5th of November. And then it's on, I think, where is it here? November 6th, they interviewed Dassey. But during this time, they're still searching. They're searching his property and stuff ever since the 5th of November. And then it's November 8th, after it's already been searched over by police and volunteers and all that bullshit, that the RAV4 key is found lying there, flat out on the ground. And here's an interesting thing about the RAV4. So in this photo here, you can see her keys in front of her RAV4, and there's multiple keys on this keychain, right? So, and here's the one that Reddit user zoomed up on and highlighted how there's multiple keys in this keychain. What happened to the other keys? Why was it only a single spare key, the key that was found there? I wonder what happened to those other keys. Kind of interesting that she had...
The Reddit sleuths are on the case.
Yeah, Reddit sleuths are on the case. So that's found, and then the bullets are found, the license plates are found, and they find the remains of the bones at the site. The blood was matched to TH. They leave the property on the 12th. They were supposed to have a deposition for Dennis Vogel, but it did not happen. And then Ken Kratz announces that Stephen Avery's blood was found inside of TH's vehicle well before they know it's his blood or man blood or anything like that. He announces it. He's a real piece of shit. That was the prosecuting guy, Ken Kratz. He was on an OxyContin addiction then, apparently. He came out and was talking about it. And he was also caught... Oh, there was a battered woman in court, and he was, like, sexting her lewd shit, and she had to, like, go and, like, get him to stop and stuff. He's a piece of garbage, and he certainly was an asshole in this. And he was another person. Like, you're a defender of justice. You were literally... supposed to be fighting for justice, and you're doing the complete opposite here. You were an absolute failure at the one thing in life that you're supposed to be good at. When you get on your wife at night, I want you to know that she's thinking about someone like me, a real man with a proper dick who believes in what he says. Everyone knows that you're a fake, a phony, a piece of shit, and no one will ever respect you for it. You can't even respect yourself. I hope you die of heart disease, you fat fuck. Ken Kratz.
I do not endorse any of these slurs or slander towards any of these individuals.
So we know that we have... so Scott Tadich, in an interview with the Calumet department, said that he was like crazy. Like, this dude had a temper, angry, capable of murder. The 22 that they were using as like the gun that was apparently supposed to be Bobby Dassey's, Tadich was caught trying to sell that gun to a guy named Jay Mathis at work. And remember, this dude not being looked at, not in any way involved, apparently. Yeah, it's really, really fucking bizarre because this dude was like, here, I'm going to read you the thing. According to Avery court filings, Tack's previous experiences with the court system show him to be a violent and impulsive person, particularly towards women. In 1994, they charged him with criminal trespass and battery, with complaint alleged that Tack visited the home of Constance Wellens at 3 a.m., knocking on her bedroom window. She was asleep with a man named Martin LeClaire, and as she called the police, he's alleged to have walked around her home and told her, "You're going to die for this bitch." And the guy went out and then went outside to confront him and knocked him the fuck out. That's hilarious. But then there's another thing where Wellnets had to file another restraining order against Tandich. This is the guy that was... Sorry, I should probably back up. This guy was dating Barb Janda, the sister of Stephen Avery, who lived next door to him. They're now married. He's like... He gives like strange shit to the press, saying what happened to him is like the best thing that happened in the world and he got what's coming to him and shit. But this dude was a crazy, violent person who was caught with the gun that Avery apparently used to kill the woman trying to sell it. Now, this motherfucker's not even being questioned. This guy's not even being looked at, and he hated Steven, and he had reason to cause season, and he could have very well done it too. But this is just another motherfucker that could have been part of it too. Like, he's equally as likely to have killed this chick and pinned it on him. Like, there's so fucking many. And then the big kicker of the series, I think everyone will agree with this, is that when they found that there was blood inside the RAV4, they're like, oh, if that matches Stephen Avery's blood, we're all fucked. Then turned out that a bit of evidence that was moved around about 11 years ago, or a few years ago, had a vial of Avery's blood in it that was supposed to be used for testing. And who had access to it? Well, if it isn't our little friends fucking Lincoln what's-his-fuck. They're the ones that had access to that vial, which has a needle puncture in the top of it. There's so many things that were convicted. Those are the most egregious ones that I think came out. And we talked about how they coerced that confession out of the kid and shit, and that, we have our theories on it. But now let's wrap up with the theories, or with the stuff that we missed that was not in the documentary, and theories for the future. So, for what we missed, there was evidence that came out after the series was done that apparently there was stuff left out of the documentary series. A lot of it came out through an email from the former district attorney, but also through a blog post that went viral. The problem with a viral blog post from Pajiba is that it just contains grossly dumb information, to the point where it's almost like they didn't see the documentary. Here's the first point that they're making when they're trying to poke holes in this documentary. The documentary said that part of Avery's criminal past included animal cruelty. To my recollection, it did not specify exactly what the animal cruelty was. I know that for some of our readers, knowing is not enough to get the death sentence for Hallbacks. He doused a cat in oil and threw it over a bonfire. Okay, so he didn't see the documentary, obviously, because we just talked about this. How do I know about the cat if I didn't watch the documentary? This is literally the first episode. So already this article that's supposed to be destroying the documentary is fucking garbage. Because the guy couldn't even go back and reference the first episode. Couldn't remember one of the earliest pieces of information about the cat being thrown over a fire. A cat being thrown over a fire doesn't stick with you, you're a fucking weirdo. So take this article with a grain of salt. You know what it is? This documentary manipulated and tugged on people's heartstrings and really was exposing gross injustice. And there's nothing worse than gross injustice, especially in a system that's designed to protect people. And when people saw that and they got manipulated by it, they fell for Stephen Avery. They fell for this case. They got emotionally invested because they're emotionally manipulated. And then on the other end, when they find out that it may not be true and that the filmmakers left stuff out, they feel betrayed and they want to turn on them.
Well, yeah, that's just the sort of nature of making a compelling film, right? You want to show the stuff that's going to get your point across. In the documentary, they don't actually say that Stephen Avery doused the cat in oil first.
No, he tells the story as he was negging on the cat, and then they threw it over a fire, and it got lit up.
That's exactly what they said.
But they did. But they said they left that out. They did not.
They left out the fact that he doused it in oil.
Well, that's the thing. We don't know if he doused it in oil. This is just coming from that obvious liar of a what's it called, prosecutor. I mean, how many times did he lie to us during that documentary that you're going to trust his word now? You know what I mean?
Well, my take on it, again, was that Stephen Avery was an idiot for the most part, when he was younger, as well.
Yeah.
But, it's difficult to say, like, I don't know. It's like such a tough thing because we're not getting all the information. Like, yes, we can Google things and we can look and see what that information has become and what it is now.
Yeah.
But who's to say, like, to what degree of messed up is this individual? Like, one of the things that the judge says when he finally sentences Stephen Avery, and he's like, based on your previous history of your the things that you've done and your criminal record and all these things, and it's like, well, what did he really do? Like, aside from throwing that cat and apparently like exposing himself indecently, and didn't he do like a B&E or something? Was there anything else that he was actually convicted of?
I don't know.
Like, they didn't really go into it, but at the end of the day, like, the stuff that's being posted now, like, I think there was a thing that just came out about Stephen Avery's ex-fiancée, who's in the documentary, saying that Stephen Avery is, screwed up. Who's to say? Maybe she's just doing that just for the.
She's an estranged ex. I mean, I wouldn't believe shit. I mean, that's not a good judge of character.
But to me, I really do believe that if justice is to be served in this, he needs a retrial. He needs a retrial for this.
Yeah. Let's keep going through these, like, the thing that's apparently destroying this fucking documentary, which is all bullshit. Past criminal activity included threatening a female relative at gunpoint. Yes, that was in the documentary, you fucking idiot. In the months leading up to Hallback's disappearance, Avery had called Auto Trader several times and specifically requested Hallback to come out and take photos. Yeah, we know that. We know he's like, yeah, send the same girl out and to do the same thing, and that's fine. That's normal. You're like, Auto Trader, can you send out the photographer to take photos for Auto Trader? I mean, what the fuck? How many photographers do they have in Manitowoc County?
They live on a junk lot. And, yeah.
So, like, and here's the funny thing. So they called her to do her job because they have to work together. And then Hallback complained to her boss that she didn't want to go to Avery's trailer anymore because when she came out, Avery was wearing just a towel. And then this writer says Avery has a clear obsession with Hallback. Okay, you're extrapolating a lot there. Like, this is clearly biased. What Padgy about Dustin Rolls? Come on, man. You can't say I had a clear obsession. Some people show up at my house. I'm in towels all the time. You know why? Because I like being naked, and I get out of the shower sometimes when people show up. It happens. Okay, and not only that, him calling her to do her job is not obsession. That's just work. On the day Hallback went missing, Avery called her 3 times, twice from a star 67 number. It says to hide his true identity, but we don't know why the reason is, or that it was from a star 67. The bullet had Hallback's DNA from it, came from Avery's gun, which was hung above his bed. Yes, but the sheriff's office had access to his apartment for weeks, or his property for weeks. They could have taken that gun, fired it, rubbed a little blood on it, and thrown it in the fucking garage. I could do that. If you can't fucking poke hole in your own theory, then you're retarded.
And how does a bullet show up with absolutely no blood? Like,
it says that has her DNA on it.
No. I mean, they found the bullet in the garage,
right?
But there was no blood in the garage anywhere.
Oh, right. Yes, you're right. How is there no blood spray from the shots? Absolutely. Like, you'd have to be amazing at it. At like Dexter style cleaning, and they weren't. That place looked like a hoarder was there. It wasn't clean. Avery had purchased handcuffs and leg irons like the ones Dassey described holding Hallback just 3 weeks before. Avery said he purchased them for use with his girlfriend Jody.
Jody came out and said that he wanted to do that to her.
Okay, weird. That one's fucking weird. That one's fishy. Here's a piece of evidence that was presented in trial, but not in the series, that I find most convincing. In Dassey's illegally obtained statement, Dassey stated that he helped Avery move the RAV4 into the junkyard and that Avery had lifted the hood and removed the battery cable. Even if you believe the blood in Hallback's car was planted by the cops, as I do, There is also non-blood DNA evidence on the hood of the latch. I don't believe police would plant or know how to plant that evidence. You don't believe that police know how to plant evidence, but they know how to plant blood evidence. Okay, come on. You're just being functionally retarded here. I seriously believe that there's trending amounts of police misconduct, blah, 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 blah. And those were the big things that kind of started the whole world. Do any of those, I know I was obviously mocking it, but any of those convince you that this was glaringly left out information?
Well, no, not glaringly left out information. Like, the stuff that I'm still more intrigued by was stuff that was actually presented in the documentary. Like, apparently, like, her bones were found at 3 different burn sites.
Okay, yeah.
On the property. Like, what the fuck's up with that? Like, that's clearly shows that somebody did whatever this crime is and then moved it around. Like, what the fuck? Like, what's the... It just felt like there was... Because the defense couldn't actually say, maybe somebody else did this, maybe we should be looking somewhere else, you're left with this very almost feeling as though they were doing... it's like it wasn't being done properly. It was like it was being done improperly. Like, why weren't they actually looking for the truth? It was like they weren't looking for the truth. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the part that... is the most compelling to me.
It's infuriating, like that's why it's compelling, because it pisses you off.
Like, why were they not looking for the actual truth of what happened? All the fabricated bullshit. I hate to say it, but if you murder somebody in your trailer and you slit their throat and shoot them in the head, their blood is going to be all over the place. You're gonna be able to find that evidence. You can't hide that type of shit.
Killing someone splatters. I've learned this from Dexter.
Yes. So it's really messed up, and the part that frustrates me is that I feel like we're never gonna actually get to know the truth of what's actually happened to this individual, and that there's the potential that somebody is out there that's committed crimes that's not in prison, and somebody else is in there for that.
Steve Avery can't even watch this in prison. They denied him the right to see this.
Wow.
I don't know. You want people on fucking death row watching their own movie? I'm fine with that. But it's just really, really. But even Stephen Avery's lawyer was like, he says, that he has doubts of his innocence. But even then, you can doubt all you want. It's like, it's fine to have doubts. You're supposed to have doubts. It's just bizarre that people were able to get away with it for so long. And even with this exposure, what is going to be the backlash? Now, this documentary came out this year when a lot of these people that are in this documentary are elected officials that are coming up for re-election. This is where they could actually get some repentance. Like, they can get, some type of, I don't know, revenge, or I guess if you want to call it that, for what they did. They may not get reelected, but there's no other, the problem is they did something so horrible, and there's no repercussions for what they did.
Yeah.
And now,
no repercussions for the way that things were handled.
Now let's get into what the fan theory is. We did a pretty comprehensive breakdown of all the elements. We went through the entire timeline to kind of, keep it tight, I guess. Kind of, can we keep it consistent so you understand the piece to pieces? Because if
you haven't watched the series,
no, you've watched the series by now, yeah. But I'm saying for people who've watched the series, going through the timeline is what really helps it keeps it logical in your head, because you go through a long journey and they do jump throughout timelines and shit, so they have it's hard to keep that all in there. So now that we have the full timeline kind of easy for you guys, hopefully it's all in your head. Now that we've done that, I'm going to read you this theory and you tell me what you think. Okay. The police didn't kill Teresa Hallback. Andrew Colburn located the RAV4 with the assistance of Mike Hallback and Ryan Hillegas, who illegally trespassed onto the Avery salvage yard the night of November 3rd, 2005. Mike Hallback and Ryan Hillegas suspected something was up at Avery salvage yard because it was the last place they knew that Teresa had visited on October 31st on Halloween Day. They went snooping on the property and found the car. They checked the car and found the key in the ignition and blood in the cargo area. Mike and Ryan removed the key from the ignition to ensure no one would easily move the car off the Avery property. Freaked out about the huge discovery, they called the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department. Andrew Colburn fielded the call that night and went out and met Ryan and Mike at the salvage yard so he could view the car himself. Ryan and Mike show him the car, and to be certain it's Hallback's, he calls in the plate number to dispatch. That's when Colburn calls it in. So he radios in the plate because he's reading it there with the two of them at the salvage yard, but rather on foot in the field of the Avery salvage property. This mistake places Colburn at the scene and in contact with Hallback's RAV4 2 days before it's recorded. It's officially located by Pam Strum. This is problematic for Colburn because all call and radio transmissions are recorded. Andrew Colburn is now operating outside of police protocol at a potential crime scene that he has no official directive to be at. He tells Mike Hallback and Ryan Hillegas basically shut the fuck up about what they found and not mention to anyone that they were on the Avery salvage property that night. Ryan and Mike turn the RAV4 key over to Andrew Colburn. Mike and Ryan are told to go home. Colburn immediately calls Lenk and briefs him about the discovery of Hallback's car and breaches the protocol he committed on the Avery property. Also about Ryan and Mike being there. Lenk, realizing Colburn's calling in Hallback's plate is a serious mistake with potential consequences, orders Colburn to remove the license plates from Hallback's car and then report to him immediately. So what Lenk and Colburn, or the others for that matter, don't realize at this point is that they are completely unaware as Bobby Dassey and Scott Tydick. Ooh, this is interesting. So Scott Tydick and Bobby Dassey have kidnapped, raped, shot, and then burned Teresa Hallback in the privacy of the gravel quarry off Jumble Road on Halloween evening. They chose to burn her body and dispose of the DNA evidence of their crimes. They hid Hallback's car in the rear of Avery Salvage and wiped it clean of their prints. I believe it is Scott Taddick's idea to secretly transport the cremains of Hallback from the gravel quarry and dispose them on Avery's burn pit. Scott transports Hallback's remains in secret by using one of the burn barrels from the yard. Scott fails to collect all of the remains from the original burn site in the gravel quarry, thus leaving behind some for the FBI investigators to later find. He also fails in making certain all of Hallback's cremains are out of the burn barrel after dumping them in Stephen Avery's burn pit. This is why investigators found small bits of Hallback in Barb Jundis's burn barrel in the pit and at the site, thus making a total of 3 sites where Hallbacks were found. Scott and Bobby are unaware that Ryan and Mike have found the car on the property and that Lincoln Colburn are now involved and playing to their scheme. By sheer luck, 2 completely independent frame jobs targeting one man, Stephen Avery, were shaping up into a perfect storm. On one front, from Lenk and Colburn regarding the RAV4, and on the other, Scott and Bobby regarding the cremains of Teresa Hallback. One party wasn't aware of the other's involvement at any point during the lead up of the official discovery of the RAV4 at the Avery salvage yard, hence why the investigation and murder trial made no fucking sense, especially to the jury. None of the evidence should be connected and is all unrelated. Everybody was guessing. But Buting and Stang have zeroed in on part of it, but couldn't fully form a solid defense to prove it. The jury can conceive that Manitowoc officers would conspire to kill Teresa Hallback to frame Stephen Avery. As Ken Katz insisted, they had to follow that theory if the defense presented was right. And Ken Katz was right. Imagine Scott Tydick's confusion and utter relief when Steve Avery's blood was found on the Hallback car and the RAV4 in Stephen Avery's bedroom. He must have been like, what the fuck? Because the quote, when that happened, he this is what he said. This is what he wrote. "This is the greatest thing to ever happen," in all caps. Remember when he said that? We talked about that earlier. So, what do you think? Did we just crack the case?
I don't know. It's a pretty logical, conclusion that they've come to.
Isn't it? Oh,
yeah.
God, it's so airtight. It just makes so much sense. And we know that Scott Taddick was crazy and that he had instances with violating other women and being violent. And we know that there was like weird things about like, I read somewhere, but I can't find it now, that there was a bunch of bleach that was like all over the floor that was used to clean up apparently DNA. And then also Brandon had bleach stained jeans.
Mm-hmm.
I'll double check that now, but it's that like, because Brendan Dassey might be guilty and Stephen Avery not, because in my mind it was both of them or none of them, right?
It's Bobby Dassey, not Brendan Dassey.
Is it Bobby? I think it's Brendan.
Read it.
Brian Dassey? Was it? What is it?
Bobby Dassey.
Bobby Dassey. This is Brendan Dassey right here. At age 16, Brendan Dassey admitted to. Yeah, I just Googled it. It says Brendan Dassey.
No, but the two people in that little side story. It's Scott Taddick and Bobby Dassey.
Oh! I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
Which one was Bobby Dassey? He's the other dude. Yeah, you're right.
He's Brendan's brother, right?
Yes. That went trick-or-treating, supposedly.
Yes.
Yeah, that's weird. Okay. Yeah, he was weird too. So both of these motherfuckers. Okay, that makes sense.
They're all weird, man.
Yeah, but this theory lines up with all the weirdness. We know that Colburn and Link wanted to set up Avery. So that ties up all the Avery shit. And then we know that like maybe this crazy motherfucker somehow was involved and her ex-boyfriend was somehow involved because that dude's creepy as fuck. And you know, that could be part of it too. Like it all kind of like everyone is part of it. The weird people that are part of it are all part of it. And maybe they're being weird because they're hiding the secret that they found. Like they were so sure it was him because they found the car on his property already and were ready to like, you know, they knew it, but they couldn't say anything. And that explains their conviction as well. Mm-hmm. It's, God, it just rapidly puts a bow on all this fucking thing. It blows my mind. And at the end of the day, I sincerely hope that some crazy fucking Dexter like judo comes out, they bones this shit, they call in David Boreanaz and they fucking figure out exactly who did this, because the mystery is the worst part, man.
Well, and I think at the end, like, if I want to say characters, but my two favorite characters were Stephen Avery's lawyers.
Yeah. Oh God, they were sharp. They were excellent. I enjoyed the hell out of watching those two. I'd watch a show about those two.
Totally. They should make a crime series about them.
I appreciate you for pulling through this. This was a long one. You are sick and you fucking pulled it out. Yeah. I can feel you fading. I can feel your leg going out. So we'll wrap it up here. Thank you everyone for listening. We went in depth. We covered all the theories. We covered the shit that people were adding in there hold on, before we go, do you have anything else you want to say?
Anything else I want to say? Well, overall, I hope that they continue making more series like this, like Making a Murderer. I think it was a very compelling storyline, and I think whoever did the editing for this did a fantastic job. You know, it was quite incredible to be this on the edge of my seat for something that was a real, actual storyline that is based on fact and based on life. In the end, I really hope that we see some potential revisions to the criminal justice system in regards to the way that people are treated in regard.
That's what this is about. That's what the takeaway is supposed to be. It's supposed to be about the allowance of corruption at the highest levels of our courts.
Yeah, and it almost goes beyond that, right? It's like the systemic issues that exist now in our current for-profit criminal justice system, and yes, I am speaking to the U.S. criminal justice system. It is a little different in Canada. Yeah, but
not much.
Overall, like those were the things that really rang true to me, and I hope at some point the truth does come out about what actually happened, and we do see the proper justice wherever it's supposed to be, whether that's on Stephen Avery or someone else entirely. I just want to know the truth now. That's what I want to see.
You pretty much succinctly put it. I have nothing else to add to that. I feel the exact same way. I think we took away the same things from the series, and we both want the same type of outcome. This is almost like these series, the reason they hype people up, because it's a call to action. It's to let people know that there's some things that are right, there's some things that are wrong. And whether or not Stephen Avery did it is still up for debate. Whether or not it was somebody else is still up for debate. But the way they went about prosecuting him, the way that they deliberately were setting him up for failure, that ain't right. And I would hate if this whole thing was us defending a person who did do it, who is guilty, who is a murderer, and this is all bullshit. But I would hate even more for the alternative to be true. So I would rather look like an asshole now and fight for the justice that I think is worthwhile than turn my back on it for the fear of looking like a fool. And that's why I'm Batman. Thank you everyone so much for listening to ROFLcast Reviews. That was Making a Murderer. Let us know what you think. You can leave us a comment on our YouTube or Tumblr pages. Go to ROFLcast.com. Follow me at Achilles or at Dr. Ruffle, at ROFLcast as well. And until next time, we remain podcasting.